All right, well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's November Bird-Friendly Communities Lunch and Learn, which is part of a webinar series that we've been doing over the course of the year. We're really happy to have you with us today. Today, we'll be talking about the relationship between domestic cats and birds. But before we get started with that, I just want to cover a few logistics so that everybody is on the same page and can have a successful webinar. So there are two ways you may be joining us today, either through Zoom or through Facebook. We'd love to receive your questions throughout the program. If you're using Zoom, you can share those questions to the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. If you're joining us on Facebook, you can add your questions to the comment section. We are happy to take those questions throughout the presentation. If we don't answer them during the presentation, we'll get to those at the end and answer as many as possible. So please send us your questions. We do want to be able to answer those. This presentation is being recorded and will be available for future viewing immediately after we finish on our Facebook page. It'll also be available on the Michigan Audubon YouTube channel within the next week, probably sooner. So if you're watching a recording of this presentation, or if you have questions that come after the presentation is over, you can send those to us at our general email address at birds@michiganaudubon.org. So like I mentioned, this is part of a series of webinars, all pertaining to different aspects of the Michigan Bird-Friendly Communities program. So if you've missed any of those in the past, or if you'd like to share those with anyone else, you can also find those on the Michigan Audubon YouTube channel. And again, questions pertaining to those can be sent to that same email address, birds@michiganaudubon.org. So thank you again for taking the time to join us today and learn more about the complicated relationship between domestic cats and birds. We're very lucky to have with us Michigan Audubon's Executive Director, Heather Good. And so with that, I will hand things over to her. So thanks, Heather.
Thanks, Lindsay. Hi, everybody. I'm really happy to be here today. And like Lindsay said, appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to talk about cats and birds with us. This is a huge part of our Bird-Friendly Communities program and the overarching work, as Lindsay mentioned, that we've been trying to build more awareness and outreach around for really the past, I would say, 6 or 7 years. And it's been growing, and we're really excited to be able to hone in on some of these topics. These are some examples of the facets of our program, and many of these we've already had webinars about, and you can watch those, download them on our website as well. So this last one, Keep Cats Indoors, my guess is most of you know why, based on this event description, that it's an issue. But let's zoom out and cover some of the basics so that there's clear understanding as to why cats are a conservation issue. This is not so much an ethics argument, a morality argument, or a right and wrong. It's mostly focused on the science of ecology and the fact that in ecology, we know that cats are an invasive species. They're incredibly successful at thriving and adapting around the world. And in North America, we know that the stats of the amount of birds that free roaming outdoor cats kill annually is now upwards of 2 billion in North America. So this is not something really that from Michigan Audubon's perspective, we want to encourage a debate about. We want to encourage knowledge about this and a commitment that also is about sharing information and helping our communities find solutions. So if you're a chapter connected with a chapter of Michigan Audubon or any sort of group, we invite you to think on that level too in your community programs that you might be able to help get started or support. So we all love birds. If you're here, you probably do love birds and you watch birds and you care about them. And you may have a lot of emotions about the fact that we're in this conservation crisis. And we see these stats over the past couple of years, more and more alarming statistics about, 1 in every 3 or 4 birds since the 70s, they're telling us this is the magnitude of avian loss. And So how do we stop this? How do we curb this decline before it gets more out of control? Well, we have to acknowledge the fact that predation by these outdoor cats, whether it's feral cats, free roaming cats, barn cats, a pet cat in your neighborhood, any cat that's outdoors is a threat to wildlife. This is our position on it, and we really want to encourage people to find solutions to making their cat happy, because we know that most people come from a well-meaning place when they do permit their cat to go outside. And we want people to help us explore ways to keep both our cats happy and our birds safe. So our position on this rests in the seat of ecological balance, and knowing that we're seeing this steep decline of birds and we want to do something to prevent it and to protect our beautiful landscapes and biodiversity in Michigan. So it's not personal. I have cats. I've always had cats, actually. Yeah. And I was a veterinary technician for 7 years. I could talk about cat breeds and cat care and go down that track, and this could be a totally different webinar. But the point is that conservation and cats, domesticated cats, they can go together. You can be both a bird lover and a cat lover, and really help this problem, the more you know. So yeah, Miss Titmouse is like, I don't know if it works that way. This is not about a fair fight, because there is no fair fight when there are invasive species in the environment. And a cat has such an exaggerated advantage as an invasive species in this, like the tufted titmouse's native habitat, that it's such an unfair fight that it's our responsibility as humans to intervene and protect wildlife and birds. So this is the fact that we really want to embrace and share. And as a conservation organization, we want to do that in a way that encourages compassionate communication with your friends and your neighbors and your family members. Whether you have cats yourself or not, this is something that's affecting our pollinators, which does affect everyone. So if you trace this far enough down, cats being outside does affect everyone. And we're really grateful that you took the time today to face the facts of this issue and explore what more can be done, and why is it important to talk about this. So a little bit more in the details of birds. And we know birds are, this is our Otis Farm Bird Sanctuary, by the way, in the background, which is in Hastings, Michigan. And a lot of ground nesting birds, prairie birds, this is an extremely vulnerable habitat for free roaming cats. So at our sanctuaries, we keep an eye out for cats, because we know the amount of damage they can do, especially in the spring with those ground nesting birds. The mere presence of a cat as a predator has an effect on the environment, and birds, nestlings, young, it will spike their stress hormones, and it does impact the habitat, whether the bird is actively hunting or killing or not. So the mere presence is a real issue. And we know that our aerial insectivores, this is where a huge core of the loss is, that our birds that feed on insects, we're seeing the sharpest decline in that group. And those birds are also very vulnerable to predation from free roaming cats. And we have over 100 species that are vulnerable because of where they nest or feed. So these are some facts specific to birds, and also the overarching fact that birds are ecological indicators. They are going to give us the best understanding, the best indicator of health and well-being in that environment. And if an invasive species with an unfair advantage of 250 times the magnitude that it should have kills that bird, then we're going to see a chain reaction if we don't take more of a stand on this and explore solutions. So we know that they're on the International Union for Conservation of Nature's global worst invasive species list. They're up there, top 3 invasive species, even though they are these cunning, adorable, lovely, incredible creatures. For their sake and for the sake of the environment, they need to be contained. Here's an exploration of some of the estimates of wildlife mortality related to free roaming cats, which I found really interesting. And I'm happy to share links with you if you want to email us at the end for more information and data. But this shows that really the number of unowned cats, or those free roaming, maybe feral cats, that the biggest predation percentage is really in that group of cats. So something that this gives us a sense of is really that more of the problem may be in feral cat colonies. There's a greater issue with those more cats being outside, like barn cat style, maybe than your neighborhood cats causing an issue. Although it's important to address across the board what mortality looks like for wildlife when any cats let outdoors. So a lot of people think, oh, I just love cats though, and like I'll just feed them, they'll be fine. I think I've probably heard it all. My cat doesn't really hunt. They've got bells. It's never killed anything. Cats they have a whole separate life that we don't know about sometimes. And that's especially true if a cat is indoor outdoor. They've been up to things that we may never know about. And as well-meaning as it is, they're better off indoors. And there are things you can do to simulate that kind of stimulation, exercise, and interest and play that they get, that you as a cat owner want them to have indoors. So we know they predate wildlife. I talked about this fact that the cats are natural predators, and so they're going to emit that through their instincts in the vicinity of nesting birds, which creates stress and can affect nesting. There's a greater concern for diseases transmitted to wildlife, mainly rabies and toxoplasmosis. And in terms of human health, public health, there's also this concern of toxoplasmosis where, say, a cat, an outdoor cat, defecates in a garden or a sandbox, and then you're weeding in the garden and you come into contact with it. It can be pretty serious if you're exposed to it. So it is something to be aware of in terms of responsibility and keeping cats indoors. So their safety and well-being, diseases they can get hit by cars, they can get into nasty fights, gnarly parasites, people will poison them or shoot them, they'll get lost. 1 in 4 cats that's let outdoors ends up lost, or we don't know the outcome of that cat's life. And I've heard people say, well, that's worth it to me because I want my cat to have a high quality of life, and if that means he's going to be hit by a car, at least he died happy being outdoors. And I would respectfully disagree that that's a necessary path for a cat that's very playful and seems to love being outdoors, because I converted my cat 20 years ago to an indoor only cat who was that very tomcat. So I know it can be done if the person takes time to work with their cat, get some tools, and be patient with the process. So this stat here of the United States versus Canadian cat owners, I thought was really interesting, that more than 70% of cat owners in Canada choose to keep their cats indoors, but only 41% of cat owners in the United States choose to. I'm not sure why this is, but I will say that overall in Canada, there is much greater awareness in the conservation communities of cats, free roaming cats being an issue. There's more commitment to talking about it and willingness to go there. And there are some community programs, such as coalitions where you can sign up and be a part of the movement, and they'll send you a little tag that has a logo that you can put on your cat and then talk to people about it. So a lot of people are changing their ways. It's never too late to learn, and we are here to offer some non-judgmental support, facts and information to help. Michigan Audubon has worked with a couple of different humane societies and animal control organizations, and our chapters have in a few instances as well, to try and get a better handle on the population of feral cats in one's community. And so these programs, TNR, trap, neuter, release, that's exactly what they'll do, and they're funded often by humane societies. So a staff member will set it up in an area, they'll identify a stray colony, and then they'll go make a couple of visits out, and then strategically get to the point where, okay, we've maybe vaccinated and sterilized all the cats in this colony, and they re-release them to that environment where the cats were. The problem with this, it doesn't help the population. We haven't seen it help in numbers. Who knows why, but feral cat populations change very rapidly, and reintroducing them to the environment doesn't address the issue of bird fatalities and wildlife predation, as well as there are other diseases that they can still transmit. So we are not a big proponent of this program in terms of its efficacy, because it does reintroduce the invasive species to the environment. So the overarching point is we have to do everything we can for our ecosystem and for biodiversity. And for Michigan Audubon, we know that that means talking about the issue. We are a statewide conservation organization, and we are a member-based organization. So we're independent from National Audubon, and we have our own programs, priorities, and policies. And this is an important difference for us in terms of an issue we really feel belongs in the catalog of bird-friendly communities resources that we want people and neighborhoods and our chapters throughout the state to understand and use. We have our position on this, on keeping cats indoors, and we want to continue to do outreach and education about the issues, and maybe even working with our chapters around how to talk about this with neighbors and friends, and doing more smaller webinars with our chapters in order to help them do more community work. But what's really exciting is a lot of conservation groups have taken a stance about re-releasing outdoor cats back into their original, like the TNR programs, and just promoting cats being outside. A lot of groups like the Wildlife Society, American Ornithologists Union, and I thought there was a veterinary group as well that have taken a stance in the last couple of years on this. So that really points to some progress in the United States as far as awareness of this issue. So let's talk some solutions for cat owners. If we haven't hit this home hard enough, we'll just say the baseline: keep your cat indoors. Just join that club and notice how it can make a positive difference in saving birds with this knowledge, and you can see the result in your cat as well. They tend to have a lot more vitality and be more affectionate and happier when they're indoors after they go through their transition, from stories we've heard from people who've successfully done that. So if your cat wants to be outside, a leash and harness. Leash training is great. There are YouTube videos on it, and how to use treats if your cat's responsive to that. There is a catio. This picture in the background shows an outdoor structure that was built adjacent to someone's privacy fence. And so the cats can be let in there, and that's their enclosure to play in outdoors. Not everyone has the privilege and the luxury of space, resources, time, and what this involves, but you can do this on a scale that works for you, or in your apartment with a scratching post, and providing your cat with stimulation indoors, as well as lots of windows and places to sit and observe the outdoors. And certainly the importance of spaying and neutering and making sure that IDs on your cat, so that if someone like you or I sees your cat outdoors, we can take it to a vet office or Humane Society. They can scan its neck and say, oh, this is so-and-so's cat, and call you and you can get your cat. Because we do want to encourage people to do that as well, and to work with their local veterinarians or Humane Society to help get cats outside back to their owners. So this was a great succinct list that I wanted to share, that of the top 5 reasons to keep your cat from roaming unsupervised. They spend more time with you. Your neighbors may appreciate you more and be really happy about that decision. I had a neighbor growing up who used to threaten to shoot our cat because we did let it inside and outside. And I was just like Joan of Arc about it, you know, like, how dare you threaten my cat? And now I understand. And he had bird feeders, and that we're all connected. We impact each other, and to be respectful and knowledgeable about that. So it is a nice thing that when people say, I didn't even know my neighbors hated it, but it helped. Your cat's a threat to the environment, we talked about, and back at the cat, it's not safe for them to be out there either. Great horned owls are another threat. They will definitely take even up to 10-pound house cat. They would take for a nighttime snack. So yeah, and if they get lost, they may not come back. So even if it's a barn cat situation, we really see that there's a lot of reasons to go a different route. So for cat owners, if you're going to do the transition, start gradually increasing the time your cat spends indoors, and make it fun, change it up. Add a couple new stimulating things to corners, move the furniture, they love that. And if you do some internal change with your space and introduce a few new stimuli, you would be amazed. That will distract them from maybe, oh, what's at the door, what's at the window. If they can scratch and climb, generally they will be happy to get their energy out. You can also grow cat greens and catnip if they like that. And a lot of times that fresh green and rubbing their face in that is very satisfying. So a little home, cat green garden, or something on your counter maybe is another good idea. So there are puzzle toys and treat balls. So lots of entertaining things you can get as well if you want to go down that route to stimulate them with more toys. And we talked about using a harness and leash or an enclosure. There are actually, I'm embarrassed to admit, but I have a cat stroller. So I do take my cats for walks on warm days, and they enjoy it like a toddler would. They look around, and then we have a nice walk, and they have their outdoor time. So it doesn't need to be free roaming to count. So whether you have a cat, love cats or not, these are solutions that we feel very strongly about as a conservation organization, rooted in our position on, preserving the biodiversity we have and trying to curb that steep decline in native birds. So plant native plants and trees in your garden, as many as native as you can, to convert your yard or add to the space you have. To introduce native plants is always going to be a benefit. Particularly if they're good for pollinators, things like milkweed, and we have lots of materials on native plants, and that's another part of our BirdFriendly Communities program. But that plays a huge part in combating the loss of biodiversity caused by cat predation. So just to reiterate that, and then other ways that native birds are killed due to human disturbances, window collisions. So keeping your outdoor lighting to a minimum where you live, and doing your best to prevent collisions, using the window tape or collision stickers on your windows is also a huge help. And then lastly, knowledge is power. Why is this a solution? Information, true information that is shared wisely and kindly is really the best solution for moving forward. That if more people understand why and can join together in ways that benefit everyone, that we can really spread the word and get more people aware of this issue and how we can deal with it. So we certainly celebrate the contributions that both cats and birds make to our lives, and want to see a culture of conservation in Michigan that doesn't make this an issue of cats versus birds, or people who have a cat. Are you a cat owner versus bird watchers? I've seen that a little bit in an argumentative sense, and really it's not an either or. It's simply acknowledging the science involved, as well as what is the appropriate habitat, and honoring appropriate habitat for both an invasive species and a native species. So we hope we can do what we can as Michigan Audubon, as a statewide organization, to make Michigan a safer place for both cats and birds. So with that, we have some time for questions. I want to wrap up before opening it up to questions, though, or comments or stories, and just invite you to join us, join our network of members, join one of our chapters if you're interested in that. A lot of times they do local birding, and they'll do more of the camaraderie building activities, maybe in your neighborhood. And we have a statewide bird sanctuary. We invite you to visit our sanctuaries and learn more at our website. We also love stories. We like to feature member stories in our community spotlight feature of our Jack Pine Warbler member magazine. And we encourage conversation and questions about this issue, because we also need to know, what are people dealing with in their communities, or in their clubs at the chapter level, or in a conservation organization? How is this showing up as an issue for us? And how can Michigan Audubon best support us moving forward and dealing with cat predation in our state?
Fantastic. Thanks, Heather. So again, if you have questions, please send those to us on Zoom in the Q&A box, or through the comment section on Facebook. I would like to just clarify, in case it wasn't abundantly clear to everyone, because I have found that I get this question a lot when we talk about how Michigan Audubon has a policy of strictly keeping cats indoors. That doesn't mean your cat can't go outside. And like Heather mentioned, there's a lot of ways for you to have supervised visits outdoors with your cats. That's more safe for both your cats and birds and other mammals. So, you know, it's not a matter of us saying we're trying to take something away from your cats, but we're trying to make it more accessible for your cats to coexist with the wildlife that is native to your backyard as well. So something to keep in mind. I do know that can be, people can get stuck on that, like keep cats indoors. So I don't want you to be too wrapped up in that. But we'd love to answer your questions if you have them. So, so this is a great question. So I've seen all kinds of numbers in the hundreds of millions to multiple billions in the US or North America annually. So who's done these studies, and how variable are the numbers from different sources? Heather and I were just talking about this.
Yeah, we were just talking about this, because I was telling Lindsay before the seminar started that I think the American Bird Conservancy released updated statistics in April. And I'd have to double check it, but they do break it down. If you look at the American Bird Conservancy's page, they cite it as well. And so they use the Fish and Wildlife Service census. And I think that there's also, they've delineated the types of wildlife, and they've given more detail as to the amount of other native wildlife, like small mammals, like squirrels and things. So there's more information available now. And the main place that I know of is American Bird Conservancy, because they do cite pretty well too.
And of course, it's important to note that it's not like we're going around tracking individual cats. So these numbers are an estimate. They could be an overestimate, but more likely they could be an underestimate of what we're actually seeing based on the methodology that's used. So someone else mentioned that they have a neighbor that has 5 free roaming cats. So what are some cat deterrents?
That's really tough. What I know as far as natural cat deterrence is citrus. I know that there's lime and lemongrass essential oils that they do not like citrus. They also don't like mint. So being me, probably what I would do in that situation with free roaming cats is I'd probably dilute some lemongrass with peppermint and water and spray around like perimeter wise and see if they're sensitive to that, if you're able to, monitor it at all.
I would also say this would be a great opportunity to utilize Heather's knowledge is power movement. And if you can have a conversation with your neighbor, maybe they don't know what kind of impacts their cats can have on the environment or how much it's upsetting you. In my household, we yell at the cat until it goes away method, but that's because I have like an almost 4-year-old and that's his method of getting rid of free roaming cats in our yard. So there are options. They're just not always as successful as we would like. Are there other questions for us? Well, I will also say that in terms of our Bird Friendly Communities program, cats are kind of one of the most recent additions to the program. And so there are more resources that we're creating regularly, and that will be available on our website and through our social media. So that's something that you can look forward to. Heather mentioned some of that while she was talking. So that's definitely a key point to look forward to in the future too. So another question came in. I know this is a presentation on the effect of cats on bird populations, but I got to thinking about the effect on deer and birds. Do you have any data or information or a stance on that?
Well, I think we can fall back on the principles of ecology to, be the backbone of the answer, that if one group or one species is overpopulated and it throws everything else off, yeah, the birds will be affected, the plant life, that kind of biodiversity will suffer. So Michigan Audubon's stance, I think, is that as much as possible, it's ideal to have balance with native predators in the ecosystem, and not too much overpopulation from white-tailed deer. And what we end up doing is seeing a lot of our native plant gardens get mowed down by if there's a high deer population at a bird sanctuary. So we run into that as well. And it is a real issue, because if they're mowing down the native plants, and we just talked about how native plants are the keystone for that whole environment to thrive. That's a really great point. Yeah. I would introduce lots of coyotes and wolves if I had my way.
So somebody said, you mentioned our bird sanctuary in Hastings, Otis Farm Bird Sanctuary. Can you tell us more about this, and what are the visiting hours, or how can we visit, I guess?
I'll let you take that one, Lindsay.
All right, so Otis Farm Bird Sanctuary is actually like in my top 2 of favorite native places to go. So it is in Hastings, Michigan, and there's information about it and how to get there on our website, but you can also Google Maps search Otis Farm Bird Sanctuary and it will give you directions there. It is open to the public daily from dawn until dusk, so you're definitely welcome to visit. I encourage you to visit, actually. It's a really great place that has a lot of variety of habitat. So there's plenty of grasslands, so we get grassland birds. There's also some forest. There's a little bit of oak openings, so you get some of that habitat, and there's a wonderful fen wetland on the property as well. So there's a huge variety of species, a huge variety of habitat, and there is a trail that's mowed. It's a little bit over a mile long in length, and it does a nice loop around. So I encourage everyone always to visit Otis. It's an amazing place to be able to go. So Peppermint, cats hate peppermint, Heather. I didn't know this either, yet they love catnip, which is in the mint family. So do you know what it is in catnip that stimulates cats?
There is, I forget the name of it, but it's an oil that only the catnip plant produces. And I think it's in the stem, maybe on the leaves too, but no other mint plant produces this oil. And the oil is supposed to be what, when the cat inhales it, like it's just stimulates their whole like pheromone thing. So yeah, I guess that's what makes a difference, a different, but that's a good point. I didn't realize that it was, but yeah, they don't like peppermint. And also the fact that when you get it in an essential oil bottle, think of how concentrate that is compared to a peppermint leaf or a mint leaf. So maybe that's part of it, is just they don't like the peppermint essential oil that's overpowering because it's, you know, irritating.
Perfect. Any other last minute questions here? I will say too, just a fun fact for everyone. I'm the only one on staff at Michigan Audubon who's never owned a cat. So most of our staff are cat owners who love to keep their cats indoors. And so this whole Keep Cats Indoors campaign and learning about the relationship between cats and birds is something new for me because I never had cats of my own. I know I definitely fell into that neighbor who got annoyed by cats growing up, because I had free roaming cats in our neighborhood who liked to use my play box, my sandbox, as a, you know, litter box, which was not fun. So I had my own opinions about keeping cats indoors for that reason. But it's a really interesting topic that has something for everyone, whether you own cats or not, whether you enjoy birds or not. I mean, it's a very complex issue that has a lot of avenues to explore. Anything last minute you want to say, Heather, before we wrap up?
Well, I think this facet of our bird-friendly communities program is, as you mentioned, Lindsay, it's new, it's growing, and we would like to hear from you if there are areas where you would like to see more development here. Some ideas that we've had include how to talk about this in a classroom setting, and working with chapters who do go into classrooms, and getting kids on board with Bring Your Cats Indoors, because we really feel like, well, if the kids understand it, they'll go home and say to their caretaker parents or whomever, hey, we should do this. So so we're trying to think of ideas to really package and share this information the best way possible. And we want to know how we can help people talk to their neighbors, because we do hear that's the hardest thing. How do I deal with my neighbors? Because you care about that relationship. There are other considerations, and yet this is an issue and there's a clear answer, but it's so difficult to communicate about. So if there are ways that we can help you think more about this or brainstorm solutions, please write to us at the birds@michiganaudubon.org. That goes right to Molly, who oversees our communications. So she can, whatever your question, she'll direct you to the right staff person. But yeah, again, I just really appreciate you taking the time today to dedicate to learning more and staying connected to these issues that matter so much for our birds.
Thanks, Heather. And thank you all again. This presentation is recorded, so you can share it with others. It's a great way to get started, especially if you don't want to be the one having the conversation directly. But all of our other bird-friendly communities lunch and learn that are part of this series that we've done previously this year are also available. So if you've missed any of those, I encourage you to check them out because there's a lot to learn. You can also find resources on our website at michiganaudubon.org. And again, that email address, if you have anything else you want to share or ask, birds@michiganaudubon.org. So thank you again to everyone who joined us. Thank you, Heather. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.